Joey Fischer was a kid with a lot of potential, as he was an honor student at a Catholic private school in Brownsville, Texas. He was pretty popular amongst the students, so it came to a surprise when he started dating Christina Cisneros, a quiet girl who wasn't known by many people. But like most high school relationships, they didn't last. Even as the two seemed fine separate and were even seeing other people, Christina's mother Dora was obsessed with their pairing. She was highly upset that Joey broke up with her daughter, constantly calling and begging him to get back with her. She consulted a fortune teller and even offered him $500 to rekindle the relationship, but he refused, sternly telling her to leave him alone. Little did he know, he had just sealed his fate, as the investigation into his murder turned into one of the most bizarre cases the country had ever seen. Welcome to history's biggest villains. Albert, or Joey Fischer Jr., was born in Brownsville, Texas on January 16, 1975. His parents divorced when he was 12, eventually marrying other people. Joey was a senior honor student at St. Joseph Academy, a Catholic private school in Brownsville. He was voted most sarcastic by his high school class, and he was set to attend the University of Texas at Austin with talks of pursuing a career as an engineer. During his junior year, he dated Christina Cisneros, a girl a year younger than him, also someone that Joey's friends described as quiet, although some said she was only quiet with those she didn't know. Her mother, Dora Garza Cisneros, approved of Joey's relationship with her daughter and thought he was potentially a good candidate for marriage. In Dora's eyes, he was an overachieving student from a good family and quote-unquote wasn't wild like many of the St. Joe boys. Dora grew up in a well-off ranching family from Los Indios, Texas, and was married to David Cisneros, a surgeon from Brownsville. They had 5 children together, and she was a well-respected volunteer in the local medical community. She was also the president of the southern chapter of the Cameron-Willacy County's Medical Society. The association where she volunteered raised funds for medical scholarships. In addition, people close to her said she was a Catholic that cared a lot for her family. She volunteered at St. Joe and was well-liked in her friend group. Since Los Indios was a town close to the southern border, her religious beliefs were heavily influenced by curanderismo, a tradition of alternative worship and medicinal healing rooted in ancient Mexican culture. In Matamoros in Brownsville, curanderos, or practitioners of curanderismo, performed white and black magic. These services were known as brujeria or witchcraft. People consulted them for help with reviving their romance, ending a marriage, making someone fall in love, or even hurting someone. Apart from relationship matters, they were also consulted to drive away negative energy, predict the future, or improve overall health. Dora really got involved in curanderismo after her oldest son David was killed after being thrown from a moving vehicle by a friend in 1974. People close to Dora described her as someone who endured several tragic events growing up. One of her uncles committed suicide when she was young, while her brother drowned as a teenager. However, several others who were close to her maintained that after her son died, Dora started to show signs of insanity, becoming more protective of her children. In terms of her daughter's relationship, Joey and Christina often did outdoor activities together, but his stepmother thought they were only friends. She said she never saw them hold hands or behave in the way that couples usually do. According to Joey's friends, the pair went to South Padre Island, Texas during spring break and had sex in her parents' condo. They said that he didn't brag about it and actually seemed to regret it, but Christina denied that this ever happened. Later that year, they attended prom together. In June 1992, Joey broke up with Christina, telling one of his friends that their relationship was only physical, with him lacking emotional attachment to her. Joey had given her his class ring while they were dating, and once they broke up, he asked her to return it, but she refused to give it back. During the first few weeks of summer, Dora called Joey several times, asking why he broke up with her daughter. He told her Christina was kind, but he wanted to be single and date other girls. Dora then called his father, Buddy, and asked him why his son had broken up with Christina. Joey was upset that he hadn't gotten his ring back, and he wrote Christina a letter saying that he wanted it in 10 days or he would take action. Dora called Buddy again and said she wanted to talk about Joey's ring among other things, and both agreed to meet at a Burger King. She asked him for the 3rd time why Joey broke up with Christina, but Buddy said that was between his son and her, adding that Joey was old enough to make his own decisions. Dora then asked if he knew that Joey drank, and he responded that at his son's age, it wasn't uncommon to drink. Dora kept pressing, saying that she had seen him drunk once before, but Buddy said that if he had been drunk before, it wasn't in his presence. Buddy told Dora that he would speak to his son about acting like a gentleman, and she promised to return Joey's ring. Buddy recalled the meeting as awkward, but ended on a positive note. He returned home and told Joey to apologize to Christina if he had offended her and to tell her that they should be friends. It's not known if he took his father's advice, but according to one of his friends, Dora continued to call him after she met with his father. He said that Dora offered him $500 to get back with her daughter, but he refused. He grew tired of her constant badgering and eventually called her and told her to stop. Once his senior year started, he dated a new girl, Marianella Cabarello. He invited her to the homecoming dance, but they didn't date for the first semester because she wasn't ready to commit. However, by the start of their second semester, they were officially together. Around that same time, Christina had started dating another boy, something Joey told his friends that he was completely fine with. On Wednesday, March 3rd, 1993, in Rancho Viejo, Texas, Joey woke up to get ready for school. Just before 7 a.m., he went to the garage and backed his mom's car into the driveway of his home at 3 Cortez Avenue. He then walked to the corner of the house and grabbed a garden hose to spray the car windows, which were covered in dust. As he raised the hose, someone came from behind him and shot him twice at point-blank range with what was later identified as a .38 caliber super pistol. One of the shots penetrated his chest and the other his brain. His mother looked out the window to see what happened, thinking the noise came from one of the palm tree branches falling on the roof. She didn't see the car, perhaps thinking Joey had gone to the store to pick up something, but his brother Eric told her he could see the car parked in the driveway. She went to the garage, and her worst nightmare came true, as her son's body lay face up on the driveway. She told her daughter Kathy to call 911 along with her father Buddy, who lived a few minutes away. Buddy quickly got dressed and headed towards the house, taking the shortcut off Texas Highway 77 and 83, going over 110 miles an hour at one point. Once he reached Rancho Viejo, he ignored the entrance, instead driving through a field of palm trees. Once he got closer to the house, he heard police sirens in the distance. When he arrived, he saw his son's lifeless body with the garden hose still in his hand. The running water had mixed with Joey's blood and had flowed into the roadway. Witnesses, including Eric, recalled seeing a close-shaven Hispanic man in his mid-20s driving a white four-door vehicle with Mexican license plates, speeding away after the shooting. The evening before Joey's burial, over 600 people attended a Catholic service at St. Mary's Church in Brownsville. His parents chose to have an open casket to allow attendees to kneel and pray next to the coffin. Many people showed up to the funeral, including Buddy and Corinne's acquaintances, plus Joey's high school classmates. Marianella and her mother attended both services. Christina was also at the services, but her mother wasn't. In the days after the funeral, several of his longtime friends and their parents gathered at Buddy's house for moral support, but the family chose to move out of the house, staying with Corinne's mother in the meantime. The day of the murder, the Brownsville police offered a $5,000 reward for anyone who could assist in the arrest of those involved in the murder. A week later, the reward was increased to $20,000. Initially, police believed that the murder was a drive-by shooting, but they soon discovered a tennis shoe print near the outdoor AC unit and a yellow business card next to Joey's body. The business card was stained by blood from Corinne's hands after she tried to stop the bleeding, but investigators could decipher what the words on the card said. It was from the Collin County Bail Office in McKinney, Texas. A phone number was printed on the card, along with a handwritten area code, 214, from the Dallas area. Alex Perez, the former sheriff of Cameron County, was appointed to lead the investigation. He called the bail office and asked them to send copies of bond applications made by Rio Grande Valley residents. The police theorized that the assailant dropped the card as Joey tried to defend himself. The bail office sent the police several applications, including one from Rudy Cuellar, a Dallas resident who often visited Mexico. That morning, Marianella was called to the sheriff's office for questioning. They asked her if she had ever had any disagreements with Christina. She said she never talked to her, as she was confused why they even asked about his ex-girlfriend. Dora was also questioned, but the police found nothing unusual about her behavior. They didn't treat her connection to Joey any differently from the rest of the leads. They knew of her frequent calls, but they didn't think it was enough to rule the murder a crime of passion. Along with the numerous tips they received, police had their own theories for a motive. It was initially thought that Joey was killed by a drug gang as a case of a mistaken identity. They questioned a man alleged to be the intended target, but the rumors turned out to be false. They also looked into an abandoned car found near the border that they suspected was used in the shooting. It was reported stolen in South Padre Island, but they determined that it wasn't the vehicle used in the murder. They continued to pursue the lead from the bail office in McKinney, as it was the strongest. They called the office again and asked for recent bail applications from South Texas locations. The office gave them a familiar name, Rudy Cuellar, along with his Dallas address. Investigators noticed that his handwriting, specifically how he wrote the number 4, matched the handwriting on the business card found at the murder scene. Brownsville officers then headed to McKinney with a warrant revoking Cuellar's bond. He showed up later at the bail office, confused as to why his application was canceled. After police questioned him, he said he gave the business card to a man at the local La Quinta motel, telling him to call the number if he was ever arrested. The motel was a known meeting spot for petty criminals, so the authorities looked into the people who had stayed there over the previous months. Cuellar put the police in contact with Ramiro Moya, a San Antonio resident who frequented Brownsville, and someone who claimed to know details about the murder. Moya then led the police to his half-brother, Daniel Garza, a painter who frequented Brownsville in Mexico. Police interrogated Garza at a motel in mid-March. He claimed to have a landscaping business in Mexico, though they suspected that he was a drug dealer. After further questioning, he incriminated himself by saying that he made arrangements to have Joey killed. He said he confessed because he was troubled by what he did. He wasn't arrested immediately though, as they needed more information from him to continue with the case. He told investigators that it started when he visited a local fortune teller after he separated from his wife in 1992. The fortune teller, Maria Mercedes Martinez de Sanchez, talked with him for several sessions to try to repair his relationship. His son was born with muscular dystrophy and his wife was depressed to the point where she wanted to kill herself and their son. Garza believed that his wife's relatives had cast a spell on their marriage and he needed Maria's help. She promised to help him only if he agreed to help kill Joey. Garza said that he was working with a client who was later found out to be none other than Dora Cisneros. This client wanted him along with anyone else who got in the way dead. Dora visited her at least 3 times after the breakup. During their first meeting, she wanted to know if Joey had any feelings for her daughter. Maria read through her cards and told her he was no longer in love with Christina. Dora paid $5 for the card reading and left the shop upset with the answer. During their second meeting, Dora asked her to cast a spell on him. Maria said she couldn't do that, and Dora got angry and left. A few days later, Dora called and asked her to pray for Joey to get back together with Christina. She returned for a third visit in October 1992 and asked Maria if she knew anyone willing to beat up Joey. A few months later, she changed her request and asked to have him killed, offering $3,000 to the person who could do it. According to Maria, Dora told her that Joey raped Christina and was telling his classmates about it, even as Christina said she never had sex with him. Although Daniel assured Maria that he would find someone to carry out the hit, he was more concerned with discussing his marital problems. Under constant pressure from Dora, Maria would often interrupt his sessions to remind him of the plan. He lied to her multiple times, telling her that he had someone lined up already. Dora called Maria yet again in November to ask her why the job hadn't been done. She said she didn't know when the murder would be carried out. Garza eventually divorced his wife on January 4, 1993. 5 days later, he traveled to see Maria once again, and she reminded him once again that a client of hers wanted Joey dead. She told him that if he found a way to make him disappear, all of his personal problems would be solved. Garza finally relented, telling her he knew 2 hitmen from Matamoros. Dora then gave Maria a photo of Joey, who then passed it to Garza. He then called Israel Olivares Cepeda and Eddie Puentes Bazaña to carry out the murder. In the last week of January, he met with him at a restaurant in Grand Prairie, Texas. He told Olivares that a woman in Brownsville was willing to pay someone to kill Joey. He was interested in the job and stayed in contact with Garza. Israel and Eddie were part of a cross-border drug trafficking and car theft ring that stretched from Mexico to Chicago. This organization was headed by Cuellar, the same man whose bond application was investigated by the Brownsville police after the business card was discovered at Joey's house. Garza met the hitman again in Dallas on Valentine's Day to describe the murder plans. They were given a target's photo and a map with the address, and they promised to carry out the hit on their next trip to Brownsville. According to U.S. border surveillance, a white Mercury Grand Marquis with Mexican license plate 821-THE7 crossed at Brownsville border entry at 6:39 p.m. on March 2nd. The same car had crossed the border 18 times between August 1992 and March 1993. When police went to the La Quinta Motel to check the register on March 2nd, they discovered that Puentes and Ramon Palomares, another known hitman, checked in with the receptionist. She registered the car in her notebook as a white Grand Marquis, but she wrote down the wrong license plate number. Investigators found that several calls were made from Puentes and Garza's rooms to an identical Dallas number on the day of the murder. Police could never connect the number with the investigation or identify the Dallas contact. CCTV footage showed that Garza, Cuellar, and Moya visited a gun shop in Dallas to purchase a .38 caliber super pistol, the presumed murder weapon. After Joey was killed, Garza said that the gun was stolen from his San Antonio home after a break-in. The gun was never recovered. Between 7 and 8 a.m. on March 3rd, the job was done, and Olivares met with Garza at the motel to confirm that the murder was successful. Garza then went to Maria's shop to tell her that Joey was dead, but she wanted physical proof before doling the money out. A few hours later, Maria called Dora and told her that the job was done, and Dora arrived just minutes later and left a sealed envelope with $3,000. Dora then went to St. Joe and picked Christina up from school. Later that evening, Garza and Puentes met Maria to receive the envelope, and they brought it back to the hotel. Garza was then picked up by his nephew in Matamoros, taken to the Harlingen airport, where he flew back to San Antonio. Even as Garza gave police a written confession on March 31st, 1993, he wasn't arrested yet again because he agreed to help them arrest Maria. He then reached out to her, saying that the assassins wanted more money. He wore a wire to each of their 3 meetings in early April, convincing her to contact Dora to give him the money. Maria was arrested on the 6th and agreed to wear a wire to incriminate Dora. The next morning, she met with her and said the assassins requested more money and she needed to pay up. As the 2 women rode around Brownsville, the police kept close to the car to stay within the transmitter's signal range. While in the car, Dora gave Maria an envelope with $500, then asked if there was any evidence that she had orchestrated the murder. In the recorded conversation, there was no further evidence that she employed them or that the assassins murdered Joey. The meeting ended when the police pulled the vehicle over and arrested Dora. She told police that she owed Maria some money, which she later admitted wasn't true. The 2 women were arrested and charged with capital murder, which meant the death penalty was on the table. On her way to Cameron County Jail, reporters asked Dora if she was responsible for Joey's murder, and she shook her head, as her husband also refused to comment. Her attorney told the press that the arrest was a mistake, and he was confident that the police had no solid evidence against her. On April 13th, Dora was released from prison on a $300,000 bond, refusing to comment as she left. Maria remained in prison, as her bond was set at $300,000 as well the next day. On June 8th, Garza was apprehended at the Cameron County office in Harlingen, having surrendered after an arrest warrant was issued. He was charged with capital murder and held a $500,000 bond. Arrest warrants were issued for Olivares and Puentes the day before, but they were believed to be in Mexico, and police said they were working with Mexican officials to arrest the 2 men. Olivares and his brother Alonzo were later arrested in Matamoros on a previous murder charge, along with the unauthorized use of a vehicle. However, both men were released at around 3 a.m. after Olivares showed the police a writ of amparo, similar to a writ of habeas corpus in America. Following their release, the Brownsville police found reports that the 2 men were seen in Matamoros, then in Monterrey, Nuevo Leon, and the next time they tried to cross the border, they would be arrested. On February 13, 1994, Puentes was arrested in Reynosa on a car theft charge. In an interview the following day, he said he wasn't guilty of Joey's murder, claiming that he was at his mother's house in Matamoros when it happened. He insisted that neither him nor Olivares were gun owners or users. U.S. officials doubted that Mexico would extradite Puentes. Reynosa officials said that he would have to face charges in Mexico first before an extradition would be considered. Puentes didn't want to go to the U.S. anyway, as he felt he wouldn't get a fair trial. On May 23, 1994, Mexican state police arrested Olivares again in Matamoros for possessing 2 stolen vehicles. He was interviewed by Mexican authorities and said that he wasn't guilty of the murder. He admitted to having stolen cars since he was young, saying that Garza was trying to put the blame on him to protect himself from prosecution. He admitted going to Dallas in 1992, but said he only knew Garza by name. He said he was a self-employed auto mechanic who supported his wife, mother, and uncle. Mexican officials said that his auto theft ring extended all the way to Monterrey, as well as Rio Bravo, Valle Hermoso, and Matamoros. There was already an active arrest warrant against him for being connected to 50 car thefts. Brownsville police went to Mexico to see if they could talk to him, beginning proceedings to bring him to a Texas court. A state grand jury indicted Cisneros, Martinez, Garza, Olivares, and Puentes on July 28, 1993. Defense attorneys said that they wanted to move the trial out of Cameron County because the case had a lot of media attention in the local area, but that request was denied. On August 12th, in a packed Brownsville courtroom, Dora and Maria pleaded not guilty to the murder charges. Garza also entered a not guilty plea, standing with the accused during the court session. The judge agreed to remove La Corandora, or fortune teller, from Maria's name on the indictment after her defense complained that the alias was a media creation, even though she was actually a fortune teller. The judge set the hearing date for pretrial motions for October 7th and the trial for November 8th. On September 20th, Maria's attorney filed a motion to suppress her earlier statements, saying she didn't understand her right to have a lawyer because she wasn't fluent in English. The defense asked the judge to discard the video and wiretap recordings because they claimed that their client was coerced to make incriminating statements. Her defense requested a court-appointed translator, the elimination of the indictment, and a severance to have her client tried separately. In addition, Garza's defense said that their client's constitutional rights were violated when he made his statements. They also said that Garza's encounter with Maria after Joey's murder was recorded without his knowledge, even though he initially agreed to wear a wire to indict Maria. On November 23rd, Dora's request for a change of venue was denied by the court. On the day of the trial, Maria admitted that she conspired to kill Joey and agreed to testify against Dora and Garza. By entering a plea bargain, she wanted to accept a conspiracy charge and have the capital murder charges dropped. The judge said that he wasn't bound by the plea agreement, but clarified that she had the right to drop her guilty plea if she wanted to. Since the trial attracted national attention, Brownsville officials expected a large crowd of spectators and reporters in the courtroom. On February 25th, the jury examined evidence from bullet remains, motel records, and photos of Joey's corpse. His brother Eric took the stand and described what he saw and heard the morning his brother was killed. He said when he heard the 2 gunshots, looking through the window and seeing a white car drive away. His sister Kathy told the jury that she and Christina had had a 2-hour phone conversation once, and Christina said that she wanted to hurt Joey. The school counselor backed this up, saying that Christina agreed that she said this, but claimed that she didn't mean it once she learned about his death. However, Christina told the jury that she didn't remember saying any of this at all. A member of the Cuellar organization, Victor Moreno, testified in court and helped connect the murder to the members of the criminal group. He said that Olivares, Puentes, and Palomares worked for Cuellar and were behind the hit. He also said he spoke with Garza about a murder in Brownsville, also claiming to have been with Cuellar when Palomares told him about the murder of a boy in Brownsville. Moreno allegedly gave Garza the money to buy the gun. After the purchase, Moreno gave the gun to Cuellar, who then gave it to the assassins. The defense responded by saying that even if Moreno's testimony was true, it was inadmissible because he wasn't involved in the murder. However, the court concluded that he was part of the process that led to the murder, and they admitted his testimony using a co-conspirator hearsay exception. On February 28th, Garza's brother Ramiro Moya testified against him and said he admitted to receiving $3,000 for the murder while he was in Brownsville. The defense tried to discredit Moya's statements by saying that he was facing drug charges in Dallas and was cooperating with the prosecution to receive a reduced sentence, but he denied that such arrangements were in place. He also said that the gun used at the murder scene was purchased in Dallas while he was there and remembered seeing it in Garza's home in San Antonio. Records from the gun shop in Dallas show Garza bought the same type of gun on February 1st, 1993. On March 1st, defense attorneys questioned evidence brought by the prosecution. They pointed out that the police had no written reports of the investigation, and they had failed to write down the serial numbers and marked the $100 bills used as evidence when Maria received cash from Dora before her arrest. In addition, a private forensic investigator hired by the defense stated that she couldn't prove that the recordings were authentic. She later mentioned in an interview that she was paid $18,000 to analyze the tapes, though she said that this payment didn't influence her study of the recordings. The defense said the searches police conducted didn't produce any evidence to implicate Dora in the murder, and that Garza was arrested for over a month after he confessed to his involvement. The police responded, saying that he was initially a witness when the police met with him in the first place. He then traveled with them to Brownsville to give an official statement, which he signed. He then stayed at a hotel in Brownsville that was arranged and paid for by the police while they simultaneously prepared to record his encounter with Maria. After incriminating her, Garza was allowed to go to Mexico. Maria and Dora were arrested several weeks after his statement, as he wasn't arrested until 2 months later. The police said they made no promises to Garza to obtain his cooperation. On March 3rd, the jurors listened to the voice recordings, following along with a transcript. On the first recording, Garza met with Maria under the pretext that the gunman wanted more money, as the police instructed him to tell her that Dora needed to pay an extra $500. On the recordings, she told him that she had no money and that Dora was out of town. He then told her that the assassins were difficult to contact, and he worried that if the payments weren't made, they could get angry. Maria then asked what the assassins did with the car they used, and if they had worn gloves when they shot Joey. After 2 more recordings between them, the police arrested her before meeting with Dora. Early in the recording between the two women, Dora handed something to Maria and said $5, referring to the $500 that was confiscated from her during the arrest. Dora then uttered the most incriminating phrase of the entire trial. "There isn't any evidence that I did anything, right?" On March 6th, the jury convicted her and Garza of capital murder. Neither of them showed any emotion when the verdict was given. Dora then removed her jewelry and was taken to the Cameron County Jail. The jurors met the following day to discuss the punishment phase of the trial. 3 days later, the judge sentenced the pair to life in prison after the jury decided that neither of them posed a threat to society, and thus didn't deserve the death penalty. This sentence included the possibility of parole after 35 years. Joey's parents said they were pleased with the verdict and that justice was finally served, but said their son's absence would leave a void for the rest of their lives. The prosecution wanted to have Dora sentenced to death, arguing that her actions were premeditated. Garza's closing words centered around him being told by Maria that Dora wanted Joey hurt, and that he wouldn't have knowingly participated in a murder. Both defense attorneys said they would appeal the verdict. Dora's attorney in particular said the judge's denial of a separate trial for his client was the reason for his early appeal. The defense said that trials where two defendants implicate each other were often severed, but the judge refused to sever them because her statement didn't mention Garza. The defense also said they would appeal because they believed that the voice recordings were tampered with. A judge formalized the jury's decision and again sentenced the pair to life in prison on April 18th. On March 25th, Maria was sentenced to 20 years for conspiracy to commit murder. The judge recognized that although she was of age and might not leave prison alive before her sentence was over, the punishment was appropriate. She was given a maximum term, as her lawyer said that if she hadn't pleaded guilty and cooperated with police, she would have gotten life as well. He also said that she would have been eligible for parole in 18 to 24 months because a murder weapon had never been found. According to Texas law, if the gun had been found, all individuals convicted in a murder case would have to serve at least a quarter of their sentence before being eligible for parole. Both women were sent to the all-female state prison Gatesville unit and kept in separate cells, while Garza was sent to a Cameron County prison. On July 13, 1995, Cameron County officials and state authorities traveled to Mexico City to get permission to prosecute Puentes and Alvarez for their role in the murder. Thousands of documents were translated to Spanish and handed over to Mexico's Attorney General for review. On July 15th, Mexican officials agreed to prosecute both of them for the murder at an international court in Mexico City. Murder in Mexico carries a maximum sentence of 50 years in prison, though it's common for people to be released after 15 to 25 years for good behavior. The Cameron County office said that they would use a federal prosecutor from Tamaulipas as the judge. The two accused would be issued an arrest warrant and asked to appear in court where a federal judge will review their case and determine the punishment in a few months. When Puentes heard the news, he was surprised and angered, maintaining his innocence by saying he was only a car thief. Alvarez was in custody at a Matamoros prison. On September 20th, a Mexican federal judge agreed to formally prosecute both men for the murder. A startling revelation occurred on January 25, 1996, as Dora's murder conviction was overturned by the Court of Appeals. The judge instructed the jury that unless there was evidence showing that she employed the assassins, or that there was evidence that Puentes or Alvarez killed Joey, she couldn't be convicted of capital murder. It couldn't be definitively proven that she hired the assassins, since her only contact was through Maria. When they analyzed the circumstantial evidence that linked the two men to the murder, they knew the pair registered at the motel the night before the murder and left the motel a few hours after the murder. They also heard they drove a car with a similar description as the one seen at the crime scene, made several phone calls to the same Dallas number as Garza after the killing, and this is coupled with the fact that Garza said he paid the assassins at a motel. While this evidence cast suspicion on the two alleged hitmen, it wasn't enough to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that either of them were behind the murder. The court also recognized that even if one of the men were found guilty, there wasn't enough evidence to show that Dora employed the two or was ever in contact with them. The jury saw the evidence that she gave money to Maria, who in turn gave it to Garza, but that meant there were several parties at fault. In order for the jury to find her responsible for the actions of another party, the judge needed to charge the jury on the Texas law of parties, saying she was acting a party to the offense. Of course, prosecutors agreed that she was guilty under the law of parties, but they didn't word her charge appropriately, suggesting that she directly hired the alleged hitmen instead of working through a third party. On February 14th, a state appeals court ordered Dora to be released on only $50,000 bond. The prosecution didn't agree to the bail amount, but they failed to file the appropriate paperwork within the mandatory 10 days. On February 22nd, Dora was officially released from prison. She made no comments to the press, and it was unknown if she returned to Brownsville or not. Joey's family denounced the ruling and said the appeals court seemed to have lost sight that their son was killed. Prosecutors said that even if there wasn't enough evidence to convict her for capital murder, she could still be convicted of ordinary murder. The reversal was upheld by the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals in November 1996. After 2 years, Dora was re-arrested on February 25, 1998, and held without bond. She was arrested for the same murder-for-hire charges as the first time. The FBI didn't initially elaborate on the charges, but they said she was indicted by a federal grand jury for using interstate or foreign commerce facilities to orchestrate the murder. The indictment's hearing was held 2 weeks before the statute of limitations ran out. Cameron County officials said that charging Dora again wasn't double jeopardy, because this time, she was charged federally. They said the new indictment included new charges not discussed in the previous trial, and that there were some areas that allowed for concurrent jurisdiction that could lead to someone being charged for separate crimes under the same circumstances. If convicted again, she was facing another life sentence and a $250,000 fine. Her defense said they would plead not guilty and ask for a jury trial, as the prosecution brought Maria to be their primary witness again. On March 2nd, the defense argued that Dora should be set free on bond during the trial because she didn't pose a flight risk. They also said that she never failed to appear in court during the 1994 trial, even though she was facing the death penalty. In addition, she was a longtime resident of Brownsville and had no previous criminal history. Though she was aware of the FBI investigation and possibly of a new indictment against her, she hadn't fled, thus justifying her bond. On March 9th, she was released on a $300,000 bond. The courts imposed certain restrictions on her freedom though, as they asked her to hand over her U.S. passport and limit her travel to the Brownsville and McAllen areas. Her husband was also required to sign a document that made him a third-party custodian. The trial was moved to Houston due to the extreme media coverage, scheduled for May 4th, 1999. In an opening statement, Dora's defense denied her participation in the murder, calling Maria a liar. They said that she and Garza orchestrated the murder without Dora's involvement. The prosecution brought Joey's mother as a witness. She took the stand and repeated her story of the 2 loud noises she heard before finding her son's corpse covered in blood on the driveway. In addition to her, other witnesses took the stand to tell their stories, including his stepfather and a gardener who saw a vehicle with Mexican license plates leaving the scene after the shooting. Maria testified again that Dora agreed to pay her to find someone to kill Joey after the unsuccessful card reading. Investigators who worked on the case also testified that she cooperated with them to set up a meeting with Dora. The prosecution also said they had audio tapes of the meeting, but they were asked to hold off on presenting the evidence because of the defense's claims of tampering. The prosecution also presented bank statements that showed Dora was drawing a total of $5,000 from a safe deposit box on July 7, 1992 and March 3, 1993, the morning of the murder. The defense claimed that there was nothing illegal about visiting a safety deposit box or making a withdrawal, saying that the $5,000 was for a family trip to Mexico. The prosecution suggested that the money was to pay off the murderers, but unfortunately, they couldn't provide any evidence linking the two actions. On May 11th, the defense introduced 2 witnesses to rest their case after 6 days of prosecution arguments. The federal jury convicted Dora of the murder on May 12th after 3 hours of deliberation. The prosecution introduced witnesses, including the motel manager and those at the crime scene, who said they saw a white car driven by the suspected killers coming from Mexico the day before the shooting. The defense told the jurors that there wasn't enough evidence to uphold the conviction under federal requirements of reasonable doubt. The government concluded that it met the burden of proof for interstate or foreign commerce charges in 2 ways, through Garza's phone calls from Mexico and through the matching license plates of the white car that crossed to the U.S. and registered at the motel. In order to find Dora guilty, the prosecution wasn't required to prove that she intended to use this commerce, or even that she knew it would be used. They were required to prove that someone involved in Joey's murder used this commerce or caused another person to use it. On July 27, 1999, the jury rendered their final verdict and sentenced Dora to life in prison. On February 24, 2000, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, acting on their own accord, decided to rehear Dora's sentence before the entire court. After reviewing the case, they reaffirmed the conviction on January 4, 2001. A petition for a rehearing was denied on February 2nd, and her defense filed a writ of certiorari, seeking a court review on April 4th. On June 19th, her defense filed a petition with the U.S. Supreme Court to review her conviction and have it overturned. But since the Supreme Court only reviews a few hundred of the thousands of requests they get each year, this appeal was Dora's last chance to have her conviction overturned. But alas, the 5th District Court refused to consider the appeal on October 3rd. The Supreme Court denied her request for an appeal a second time on November 10, 2008, bringing the case to full closure. She's now at the Federal Medical Center in Carswell. Over 2 decades after her imprisonment, Dora still maintains her innocence. Since Maria was a U.S. citizen, she was deported as a result of her conviction. She was released from prison in April 2001 and later died in Matamoros. Garza, who was sentenced to life, turned to religion and became a devout Catholic. In a letter to the press in 2013, he thanked God for saving his life after 2 ruptured stomach ulcers followed by a heart attack that nearly killed him the year before. He won't be eligible for parole until June 2028, when he's 78 years old. Inside the gymnasium of Joey's former school is a gold plaque that reads, "May the serenity of the peaceful oceans and the warmth of the deep blue skies embrace you in the realms of heaven. May you light heavenly skies with love and enthusiasm as you lit ours for 18 years. May the angels welcome you with open arms and joyous voices. We love you, Joey. Class of 1993 and 1994. Man, this was a story. I personally don't understand, like what was the reason for killing Joey? He broke up with your daughter, so you killed him? That makes no sense to me. Like, what was the reason? Like, what did you get out of it? I'm trying to think, like, as the mother, what did you get out of that? Is this sort of like a revenge thing? I don't even know. Like, all this, you killed an innocent boy. He had his whole life ahead of him, and you just had him killed. In fact, it took, like, 6 people to kill one 18-year-old boy. It's crazy. All this big coordinated effort just to kill him. Hope you enjoyed this really long story, man. But I really appreciate y'all for the support. Leave a like, hit subscribe if you're new to my channel. Turn my post notifications on if you haven't already. Thank you. Please be safe, stay on the grind. I'm out. Peace.